What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. It is time to give you my updated college football top 25 rankings as we head into week number 14 of the 2024 college football season. We are heading into the final weekend of regular season play. Rivalry weekend, of course, is here. This is one of my favorite weekends of college football. I know it's later in the season. It's also the last weekend of regular season play, but I always look forward to rivalry games pretty much, every year. And going into this weekend, pretty much, the games do begin on Thursday, and then we got some games on Friday coming up, and then on Saturday. So it's kind of like going back to Labor Day. You had like a full weekend of college football games that, continued until like Sunday, and then of course to Monday. So it's kind of like just like that. So I'm going to give you my top 25 here though for this week, pretty much after week number 13. And I made a lot of changes here to my top 25 for this week. We saw a lot of chaos like how it's been here in the month of November. I have never made a lot of changes here to a single month, and that's what the month of November has done to me. So let's go ahead and get updated my top 25 here. Let's go ahead and get started. We'll start from the bottom and work our way up to the top. So starting from 21 through 25, I got UNLV at number 25, Tulane at number 24, Iowa State at 23, Colorado at 22, and then Indiana at 21. So starting with UNLV, they are 9-2. This is the second best team in the Mountain West. They'll probably likely meet, Boise State for the second time in the Mountain West championship game. You look at UNLV, they have a pretty good resume as a group of 5 team. Again, the losses, come to like a Power 4 team in Syracuse. Syracuse has been a pretty solid team this year. And then the other loss comes to Boise State, which that is a really good loss on their resume. And they actually have a couple of, Power 4 wins against Power 4 teams. So, yeah, UNLV with a great resume, so that's the reason why they're pretty much back here in the top 25. Tulane at number 24 did not play this week, so not much to talk about. The Green Wave. Tulane right now is that front runner in the American Conference after Army went down this week. So yeah, Army and Tulane might actually meet for the conference championship game because, Army did play against like a non-conference team in Notre Dame, so it still likely could be Tulane versus Army, but the Army and Navy game's coming up, so maybe that kind of decides who gets to the American Championship game. But Tulane here at number 24 did not play this past weekend. Iowa State comes in at number 23. Much needed win here against a Utah team, 31-28. Iowa State's now on a 2-game winning streak. They kind of been better now for the last couple of weeks. Ever since that loss to Kansas and everything, they've been a little bit better. So Iowa State here at number 23. They'll have Kansas State coming up this weekend. That's always a pretty good game. It was a pretty good game last year, and it's also a revenge game here for Iowa State. Or actually, I think Iowa State beat them last year, if I'm not mistaken. It was a snow game, so I'm kind of anxious to see what the weather is going to look like for this week for that game. But Iowa State here at number 23, they beat Utah 31-28. Colorado at number 22, a tough loss to Kansas. They lose that game 37-21, so they do drop outside the top 20 for me. But you look at the losses that they've had this year. You got the loss to Nebraska. You also got the loss coming to Kansas State. I can't remember where their third loss came from, if I'm not mistaken. But, yeah, Colorado here at number 22. Again, a very tough loss for them in this, really tough game against, Kansas. Kansas really pretty much, ran the football all over this Colorado defense. That was the story there. The Jayhawks just definitely ran the football down this Colorado defense's throats, and they were not ready for this, running game of the Jayhawks. Jalen Daniels really gave some problems on the Buffalo's defense, and Colorado's offense just really could not get some explosive plays down the field. Now, they had an explosive play here or two or there with Travis Hunter, but it just was not enough, and Colorado comes up short in that game, so they are now 8-3 on the season. Again, I don't really know where the third loss came from, but yeah, Colorado here at number 22, and then Indiana at number 21. They dropped for me a good amount. I had them in the top 10 last week before the game against Ohio State. But I do drop them a good amount because of their resume. So Indiana loses to Ohio State 38-15. Again, that's not a really competitive game whatsoever. Indiana definitely was right there with Ohio State in the first quarter, but it was all Ohio State there from the end of it. So yeah, the Buckeyes definitely were the more better team, and Indiana definitely is clearly not on the level of Ohio State just yet. Indiana's been dominating their opponents this year, but they're definitely not on the level of some of these talented teams, and that only talented team that they played this year is Ohio State. Maybe you can put Michigan in there as a talented team, but Michigan's not really good this year, and that might be Indiana's best win of the season, against a 6-5 Michigan team. So Indiana drops for me a good amount at number 21, but this team is still probably in contention to make the college football playoff. I mean, they needed kind of, some help from the other teams after they lost over the weekend. I mean, we saw chaos in the SEC, which I'm about to, talk about here in just a second. But Indiana here at number 21, these are my rankings here from 21 through 25. Let's now move on from 16 through 20. I got Illinois at number 20, Kansas State at number 19, Missouri at 18, Texas A&M at 17, and then BYU at 16. So Illinois comes in at number 20, a huge win over, Rutgers, like 38-31. I think that was the final score of that game. That was a pretty competitive game between those two teams. But Illinois is back in the top 25 for the first time in a while. It's not really just because of their resume. It's more about the Kansas win. That Kansas win is looking a lot better now for Illinois. And plus, they have the loss to, a pretty good Penn State team that's in the top 5 for me. So Illinois is back in the top 20 for that reason. So yeah, Illinois here at number 20. Kansas State at number 19, they get a big win over Cincinnati, like 41-15, so a pretty big win here for the Wildcats. Kansas State, like I mentioned, they will play Iowa State this weekend. That's going to be a very competitive game, and that kind of is a game that, Iowa State probably needs to win to get to the Big 12 championship. I did kind of, forget to mention that a little bit, but, Kansas State here at number 19, they get a much-needed win here against, Cincinnati, 41-15. Missouri at number 18. Missouri beat Mississippi State on the road 39-20. Missouri bounces back after the loss to South Carolina from last weekend. But you look at Missouri's resume, they probably are the second best 8-3 team in the SEC, behind South Carolina, which they got beat already. You look at the 3 losses for Missouri, they come against like really good teams. Alabama, maybe that's not really like a quality loss for them now, but the South Carolina game is probably their best loss, and then the other loss came, to Texas A&M, which is another pretty good loss for them as well, but they're just right here ahead of them. I know Texas A&M lost over the weekend, but you still got to put the Aggies ahead of here, the Missouri Tigers, because of the head-to-head. But yeah, Missouri, back to what I was saying about them, they get a big win on the road at Mississippi State, 39-20. Plus, they have a couple wins against like really good teams in the top 25. They got a good win over, They got a pretty good win in the SEC. I really can't remember who it was. I can't remember who their top 25 wins were. But, yeah, Texas A&M here at number 17. A tough loss to Auburn in 4 overtimes. That was a great game, probably the SEC game of the year so far, in my opinion. But, yeah, Texas A&M, they're now sitting there at 8-3. This was definitely a trap game here to close out, before a rivalry weekend against Texas. That's going to be a big game coming up this weekend. I cannot wait for the Aggies versus the Longhorns. The first game, between these two teams since, the year of 2011, before Texas A&M obviously was still a member of the Big 12, or actually before Texas A&M actually moved on from the Big 12 and went to the SEC in 2012. So I'm looking forward to this matchup and looking forward to the rivalry being back, and I can't wait for it. So Texas A&M here at number 17. BYU at number 16. I don't think you can penalize BYU for losing to Arizona State like 28-23. This is a team that, really came close to, coming back and winning this game. But, Arizona State did make some plays down the stretch there. They ran out the clock. And, it looked like BYU had a chance to still win this game. There was still like 1 second to go in this ball game, but BYU does come up short here because of the Hail Mary. The Hail Mary did not even reach the end zone. So, yeah, BYU here at number 16. I only dropped them 1 spot, to be honest. Last week I had them at number 15. I just got them outside the top 15 here just because of the loss, but I don't think you can penalize BYU for losing such a close game. I know first half they didn't really play that well, but second half they really came back and almost really won this game. So BYU here at number 16. These are my rankings here from 16 through 20. All right, 11 through 15 now. Arizona State at number 15. South Carolina at 14. Ole Miss at 13, Alabama at 12, and then Miami comes in at number 11. So Arizona State defeats BYU 28-23. I just talked about that game a while ago. Arizona State made some huge plays down the stretch of the fourth quarter, and they ran the football in this BYU defense to pretty much like close out the game. But again, their defense had to make like one more big stop there on the Hail Mary in order to like secure this win. Now it looks like it's Arizona State that might make it to the Big 12 championship. Arizona State just has to defeat their rival Arizona this week in order to kind of get to the Big 12 championship, because I think Arizona State would probably get in over the tiebreaker between between BYU and Colorado. Colorado, after losing to Kansas, they probably need a win this weekend in order to kind of stay alive in that conversation. But let's see if Arizona State and Iowa State lose this weekend. Then I think it's going to be BYU versus Colorado in the Big 12 championship. But I don't know how that's going to play out. But, Arizona State, a big win against BYU, 28-23. This has been a very big surprise team in 2024. And they're ranked number 15 here for me this week. South Carolina at 14. This is a team that might be the best 8-3 team in the country, and they're definitely the best 8-3 team in the SEC. South Carolina gets a huge win over Watford, like 51-12. They got Clemson coming up this weekend in Death Valley. That's going to be a big game. This might be the best South Carolina versus Clemson game that we've had in a very long time. You got two really good offensive teams going at it defensively. Two very even defenses as well. I mean, this game could probably go two different ways. It could definitely be a shootout. It could be a defensive battle. I think it could be a defensive battle just because it is in Death Valley, but South Carolina definitely has a chance. They've done it before. They beat Clemson in Death Valley a couple years ago. Could they do that again? I mean, South Carolina has been a really hot team now going down the stretch. And you look at South Carolina's resume, a couple of wins over Texas A&M and Missouri, 3 losses coming to Ole Miss and Alabama, and then the other loss. I don't know where the other loss came from, if I'm not mistaken. It was actually, I can't remember, but Ole Miss and Alabama here, just ahead of them. We have to put Ole Miss and Alabama still ahead, of South Carolina because of the head-to-head matchups. And both Alabama and Ole Miss already defeated South Carolina. And South Carolina's actually, their other loss came to LSU, which is not like a great loss for them, but it's still a really solid loss for them because LSU is now 7-4. So South Carolina at number 14, they get a much-needed win here before the Clemson game. They were not overlooking Watford and looking ahead to that game against Clemson. And then Ole Miss and Alabama, they both took a really tough loss this past weekend. Ole Miss lost on the road at Florida, 17-14. Very tough loss here for the Rebels. Ole Miss definitely probably out of the playoff conversation now. I mean, the Rebels just needed this really big win because, if Ole Miss did, probably win this game, they were probably going to be making the college football playoff. But after this loss, it doesn't look like they're going to make it in. And then Alabama, Alabama could still probably come back from the dead, unless, something happens here in rivalry weekend. But yeah, Alabama's game against Oklahoma. This was definitely an ugly performance here for Alabama. The worst game that Alabama's probably played all year long, probably since the Vanderbilt game. The defense just really could not stop this Oklahoma offense. And the offense for Alabama made a lot of mistakes. They had so many penalties in this game as well. I think the referees probably made a little bit of bad calls in this game as well. But Alabama, it's a tough loss for them. They're now sitting there at 8-3. They still got wins over South Carolina, Missouri. I mean, those are a really good, good couple wins there. But the 3 losses now, they come to, Vanderbilt. They also got the loss to Tennessee, which is probably their best loss on that resume. And then you got, of course, the loss now to Oklahoma, which is not a bad loss for Alabama, but it was still a horrible game for the Crimson Tide. So Alabama here at number 12. Miami at number 11. Coming out of a bye week, they do take care of business against Wake Forest, 42-14. But it wasn't really till the fourth quarter that Miami started to turn it up. And that's kind of been the thing with Miami this year. It seems like they just pull away in the second half from their teams. But they do pull away here in the fourth quarter against Wake Forest, and they get a much-needed win. If they beat Syracuse this weekend, they'll make it to the conference championship in the ACC. They just need to win that game, and they'll definitely be in the college football playoff as well. Because I think a couple of ACC teams probably could make it in just because of the chaos that we had in the SEC. But these are my rankings here now from 11 through 15. All right, 6 through 10 now. We got Boise State at number 10, Clemson at number 9, Tennessee at number 8, Georgia at number 7, and then SMU here at number 6. Boise State, a close call against Wyoming, 17-13. Huge win here for the Broncos. You look at Boise State's resume, they got wins over UNLV and Washington State, and they also had the loss to the number one team in the country in Oregon. So a really good resume for Boise State. That's the reason why they're ranked in the top 10, and because of all the chaos that we saw with Alabama and Ole Miss going down this weekend. And then same thing for Texas A&M. Clemson at number 9. They beat a Seidel team. That's not really that good, so they take care of business. Clemson will play South Carolina this weekend. That is going to be a big game, just like I mentioned it. Clemson versus South Carolina in Death Valley, and it's really a big revenge game for Clemson because they lost in Death Valley a couple years ago. I know Clemson beat South Carolina last year. They got revenge on them at South Carolina's home place, but this is a revenge game for the loss that they had a couple years ago. And, DJ Uiagalelei was probably the quarterback that year, if I can't remember correctly. But, yeah, Cade Klubnik, he's been pretty consistent this year. The defense also has been really good. So Clemson here at number 9. Clemson probably could still make the ACC championship. They need to probably see Miami or SMU lose this week. I don't think you can penalize SMU because they had the win over Louisville, and Clemson lost to Louisville, so that's where the second loss came from, and then the other loss came to Georgia. I just don't think you can penalize SMU. So let's say it's probably Clemson versus SMU in the ACC championship. So Clemson here at number 9. Tennessee, a big shutout win over UTEP, 56-0. They improved to 9-2. They're back in the playoff conversation after Alabama goes down, Ole Miss goes down. And then probably Indiana, to be honest. But, yeah, Tennessee gets a much-needed win here. They'll have Vanderbilt coming up this weekend. If they can take care of business, Tennessee definitely will get in the college football playoff as an at-large team at 10-2. And then Georgia comes in at number 7. They beat their opponent. And I'm not sure who they played. It was actually UMass. They played UMass over the weekend. They win this game like 56-21. So Georgia gets a big win here. And then, of course, they got Georgia Tech coming up this weekend. Boy, Tennessee and Georgia might have some trap games, to be honest, because Georgia Tech and Vanderbilt were like the worst teams in their conferences over the years, but now it seems like they're back in the right direction. I think Georgia Tech would probably beat Vanderbilt on a neutral field, but it would be a close game. But Georgia and Tennessee, they got some big rivalry games coming up this weekend, and then SMU here at number 6. They take care of business against Virginia on the road, 33-7. If SMU wins this weekend, they're in the conference championship. They can finish out at 11-1. Even if they lose the conference championship, I think SMU has to be considered as a playoff contender. The committee has just not given them the respect that they deserve. And I hope SMU is probably ranked in that top 12 field in the college football playoff bracket. They definitely deserve it because there's been a lot of chaos in the SEC. I don't know if it's just name brand bias or not, but SMU here at number 6, they definitely deserve a lot of credit. And they're sitting there now at 10-1. Again, a big win against Virginia on the road, 33-7. We move on down to the top 5. The top 5 pretty much, stays the same for me. I got Notre Dame at number 5. They beat Army 49-14. That was a game that was not even close. Notre Dame, when it comes to these like triple option teams, their defense always seems to really ready to go here in this one. And then offensively, they just played so well in this game. So Notre Dame here at number 5. If Notre Dame wins their next game, they're definitely still a lock for the playoff, even if they lose to USC this weekend. But I think Notre Dame will probably win this game. So Notre Dame here at number 5. Penn State, a close call against Minnesota, 26-25. Penn State had that fake punt in the game, and that probably kind of sealed the deal there. I mean, offensively, Penn State really struggled in this game. They really couldn't protect Drew Aller at quarterback. But, the defense pretty much made the difference here in this game. And that special teams play, I think, made the difference there. So Penn State here at number 4. And then Texas at number 3. They take care of Kentucky, 31-14. Again, a big showdown coming up against Texas A&M this weekend on the road at Kyle Field. That's going to be a big game. I believe it's going to be a night game as well. That is a huge game coming up this weekend. So keep an eye out on that one for Texas. If Texas wins this game, they'll make it to the conference championship. But if they lose, maybe Texas A&M jumps in the conference championship. This SEC is just so wide open, and I can't wait to watch this game. Texas versus Texas A&M. Again, I'm hoping it's a night game because it definitely makes sense to have it a night game in a rivalry game like this. Ohio State at number 2. They beat Indiana 38-15. I was so impressed with the defense for Ohio State, but the offense definitely looked a lot more impressive. Will Howard was so consistent in this game. Look, he had the turnover like early in the game, but Ohio State just definitely took care of business. The wide receivers were so impressive, and again, the offense just really made the difference here. And then Oregon had a bye week, so we really can't talk much about the number one team in the country. Oregon has already controlled much of its destiny, though, already. They'll play in the Big Ten Championship coming up in a couple more weeks, and it might be against Ohio State, because I feel like Ohio State's definitely going to beat Michigan in the game. It probably won't be even a close game whatsoever, but yeah, Oregon's still got one more game to play. They got Washington coming up this week in a rivalry weekend. So that is my rankings here in the top 5. And those are my top 25 rankings here as we head into week number 14 and also rivalry weekend of this 2024 college football season. It has been a wild season. Let me guys know what you think about my top 25 and give me your thoughts about the entire 2024 college football season down in the comments below. Thanks for watching this video and stay tuned for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports YouTube channel.